Chapter 14. Refugees. Blue brings out the color of her eyes, thought Jayden as Garrod continued his little tantrum in the background. I don't think I've ever seen a red-headed girl with blue eyes before. Instead of trying to argue with possibly the most stubborn man he had ever known, Jayden had decided to let his mind wander in the hopes that some sort of solution to his dilemmas might magically drift out of the fog, over the walls, through the city, and into his consciousness. So far, it had not. He had tried arguing in the beginning, even shouting. All that had gotten him was a sharp cramp in his tender ribs, and an admonishment from his companions that if he did not calm down immediately, he would be confined to bed, forcefully if need be. They had already done so with Quandas, so he knew it was no idle threat. Now he simply sat at the large square table and did what he could to hold his temper in check. For the moment, that consisted of admiring Cedra's eyes. She caught him looking at her, the third time now, but only smiled sympathetically at his plight. It might have been his imagination, but there seemed to also be a reassurance that he was behaving exemplary in the look she returned, and an unspoken encouragement to keep up the good work. He lowered his gaze and almost laughed aloud at himself. All that from a look. Definitely my imagination. Is it rude to stare at someone if they don't seem to mind that you are staring? He wondered. Matthias would know. He always had a way with pretty girls. He could speak to them so casually about anything. His closest friend had always been the voice of reason between the two of them, wise beyond his years. An old soul in a young form, his mother had said of him. Again, Jayden wished he were here with them now. Or better yet, that the two of them were at their favorite fishing hole on the Willow Bar River, the mighty stream that ran north to south through the center of the kingdom. It had been the playground of their childhood. Rugged and wild in the north, it was perfect for secluded fishing trips or an exciting ride in a canoe. Farther south, it grew wide and slow, an excellent place to lie back on a raft and drift a summer day away. Cedra could come too, he decided. Matthias would like her. "Your Highness," a voice interrupted. "Yes," he replied to one of Garrod's young advisors, whose name he had already forgotten. "What are your thoughts on the matter?" Jayden sighed. He knew what they were speaking of, even if he had not heard the details. The subject had not really changed all that much since they had sat down in the council chamber over an hour ago. Garrod felt that mercenaries should be hired from the closest neighboring nations, never mind that it would take weeks to gather them from North Calas and Rose, and that they would have to agree to be paid in promises of future spoils from the occupied capital. The very idea was beyond foolish, when Mora still had one of the largest standing garrisons in Crysin, even minus the men who had been lost in recent skirmishes with the trolls. "Half of your troops," he repeated for what had to be the 10th time. "Only the most seasoned. When Eridan is reclaimed, I will send them back." "Back to what?" Garrod sneered, rising from his chair as though he thought it might make his words louder. "A burnt husk filled with their family's bones?" Why did the man insist on talking in circles? Jayden's bruised jaw was just as nagging as his ribs now that the pain from the short but brutal battle with Dergmont had truly set in. Every time he opened his mouth it brought renewed strength to the dull ache that originated from the socket where his tooth had been, sending throbs all the way up to his temples. His head was beginning to pound. "Trolls are the least of your worries, I assure you," interjected Spurion, saving Jayden from more pointless dialogue. "If the capital is left in the hands of the enemy, Mora will be assaulted from the west within the year, and even sooner from the south if the split is overrun, which it may very well be without Crysin's forces there to lend support. We cannot wait. We must march on Eridan now. If Jayden does not sit on the throne within the next few months, there will be no time to marshal forces against the Day of Darkness. Or have you forgotten that a mere 5 months from now, we must ride south along the Trail of Heroes to meet the demons? Has it somehow slipped your mind that mankind is assaulted once a year by hideous creatures that pour forth from the netherworld, bent on exterminating the human race in its entirety?" "The other nations can hold the split," said Garrod. "It is about time they pulled their own weight. The Protector and his Netirans alone can guard the chasm if they have to." The grinding of Spurion's teeth was audible. "At the risk of repeating myself, the Protector is missing. and has not been seen since before the fall of Eredin. We cannot count on his help. Grisland would not have moved against us if there were any chance that he was alive. My brother is deathly afraid of the man." "The Protector is immortal!" exclaimed a pimpled youth who Garrod had appointed as another of his advisers. Coughlin might have been his name. His voice seemed to break every time he spoke. Puberty could not come soon enough for the poor lad. Spirion ignored him. "There is more dire news yet," he continued as if there had been no interruption. "The split is weakening, and I can provide no precise estimate as to how much longer it can be maintained. At best, I fear the chasm will hold for no more than a year, maybe 2. At worst, it is possible that there will be no chasm in 5 months to prevent the minions of the enemy from crossing freely into Alnorda." "Weakening?" repeated Garrod. He shared an incredulous glance with his young advisers, ignoring the 3 veterans who currently sat his council, and together they all broke into laughter. "The Protector is dead, so you say, and now the split is closing, so you say. What other wild claims would you like to make, if you even really are the Spirion of legend? Is evil King Zedith himself coming to Mora to steal away naughty children as in the old wives' tales? Perhaps the Druids will cross the uncrossable Eastern Sea and take their kingdom back from us before the split closes, and then we won't have to worry about trolls and demons and rogue wizards." Jayden gently massaged his temples, forcing himself to breathe deep. "How old are you, boy?" Spirion asked Garrod in the most condescending tone he could muster, and that was saying something. Everyone at the table winced visibly at the question, knowing exactly how the temperamental young man was likely to react. Mora's easily insulted acting ruler did not disappoint, sputtering in indignation as though the wizard had just given him a pastry with a rock inside, and he had bit down hard on it. "What in the bowels of the split does that have to do with any of this?" "Everything, it would seem. I would tell you my own years, but I am not sure that you could fathom the number. I highly doubt that you could even count to it." Garrod was so furious that he opened his mouth to bellow, but no sound came out. "Sir," Zurith Pool interjected, "Spirion was there when the split was created. It would be wise to heed his words." Garrod glared. "Do not presume to lecture me, Zurith. The only reason you are on my council in the first place is because my grandfather appointed you to babysit me. I don't need a babysitter any longer. I know you side with the Northerner and his freakish companions in these matters. Is your allegiance to Mora or to them? I wonder." "My allegiance is to Crysin and to the throne, as was your father's and your grandfather's. The kingdom is strongest together. I know it, they knew it, and I know they tried to teach it to you, because I was at their sides when they did so." "They are dead." Garrod shook with poorly restrained rage. "I rule this city now. You are dismissed from this council." The room went silent. Zurith Pool rose slowly from his seat, the dangerous glint in his eyes causing the younger council members to stand and place their hands on their weapons. Pool snickered at them. "Do not worry. I'm not going to give him the thrashing he deserves. Instead, I give you 3 days to change your mind, my lord. If you have not come to your senses by then, I am taking those men loyal to Crysin and marching on Eredin at the request of our future king, Prince Jayden. It is what your father and your grandfather would have done. The thoughts be with them. And the thoughts be with you if you try to stop us." "Your Highness," he said with a deep bow to Jayden. With that, he turned on his heel and left the room. The 2 remaining older men on the council shared a brief look, then wordlessly rose from their seats, departing after him. "You'll never make it through the gates!" Garrod shouted after them. "I'll have you all hanged for traitors! I can do it!" The tension in the room after the older men's departure was palpable, an already volatile situation having just become more so. There was no doubt in Jayden's mind that many would follow Pool and himself, but what about those who did not? If Garrod ordered that they be stopped, there would likely be bloodshed. Crysin could not afford more bloodshed, now least of all. "Fool," said a female voice into the heavy silence. All eyes turned to Sidra. "What did you say, girl?" "I am no girl," And I said that you are a fool." She repeated the word a little louder this time, as if to make sure he could hear it. "Your fear and stubborn pride are blinding you to the magnitude of the situation. In the last 6 months, I have watched the city I grew up in burn, fought what I believed to be demons, seen magic I was sure existed only in storybooks, and watched the grandfather who helped raise me appear to channel the words of the very thoughts themselves. Your prince needs you. The kingdom needs you. I know you have witnessed atrocities of your own, but if you think that hiding behind a big stone wall is going to make it all go away, then what else can one call you but a coward and a fool?" Garrod attempted to respond, but only spit a tendril of drool onto his chin for his efforts. He looked to his council for help, and received only nervous, blank stares. Finally, he calmed himself enough to respond. "This is men's business," he growled, wiping the spittle from his chin. "I did not invite you here, and no one asked you to speak. If I wanted the advice of some peasant whore, I would hold my council in the trade district." Jayden rose. "Garrod," he said sharply, cutting off any chance of a retort from Sidra, "may I speak with you alone, man to man?" "Why?" "I have an offer to make you that my companions may not approve of, and I do not wish for them to hear of it yet." He was uncomfortably aware of the looks he was receiving from Spirion and Sidra, but there was no help for that now. He had made his decision. "What sort of offer?" "You have made it clear that you will not lend us the support of your garrison. After our meeting with Dergmont, I can understand your reasoning. There are unnatural forces at work here, and I do not wish to split your city apart any further. The people of Mora have suffered enough. What I propose does not involve soldiers." Garrod nodded. "At least now you acknowledge the danger this city faces, though I am curious to know what the Prince of Crysin, who has no kingdom or troops, has to offer me." "Give us a moment," he told his advisors. Rising, he motioned Jayden through a rear door that accessed a small turret. Curved stairs led up one level to where another door opened out onto a long, raised walkway that led from the official rooms to the private chambers. On either side, the path looked out over 2 wedge-shaped courtyards. The wind was strong this high up, and the chill in the air made it hard to believe that spring should already have come. There were no guards present. They were alone. Garrod turned to face Jayden, a scowl on his wide, boyish face. "Why do you waste your words? You have seen the evil that haunts these woods. Do you think it is some coincidence that Eredin fell at the same time the trolls decided to move against us? Don't you see? The other nations have conspired to destroy us. The best my people can do is fend for ourselves and maintain a strong defensive position. Nothing you say will change that." Jayden stared at him, incredulous. Did he honestly believe that this was some elaborate plot by the other nations? "Don't look so surprised, Jayden. You know how jealous they are. The Kalasians have always desired this land, since the day over 200 years ago when King Riften Darning of North Kalas sat himself up in Hagmere, proclaiming it the center of his kingdom, and turned his eyes to the west. Now that my grandfather is gone, there is no one strong enough to stand against the armies they will bring. All hope we had died with him. Ride forth to your death in Eredin if you wish, but you will not take our soldiers. The only chance we have is to survive behind the protection of our strong walls for as long as we can, and pray that the invaders will be lenient when they finally come in force. Crysin is no more, and will never be again." When Garrod finished speaking, his lip quivered as if he was on the verge of tears. Jayden watched with sympathy. Zurith Pool was right. This was not a cruel man standing in his path out of hatred, but a frightened boy. Fate had dealt Garrod a poor hand. Jayden was sorry that circumstances had brought the young ruler to such a state. He was sorry that the two of them could not seem to bury their past differences and work toward creating a future for Crysin. He was sorry for what he must do. "Well, what is it you have to offer? What can you possibly give us that can save this city?" "I have nothing to offer you. Draw your sword." Garrod stared at him dumbly. "My father's kingdom, my kingdom, is in shambles. I will waste no more words on you. I do not have the time, the strength, or the patience. I name you traitor to the realm, and will have done with you as is my lawful right, my duty in the service of the land. Let us finish what we started 2 years ago when you could not accept defeat at my hand. Draw your sword." Jayden drew his own blade then, not bothering to balance himself. "Like this," he instructed. "I know how to use a blade, Prince. You will find I am not such easy prey as when we were younger. I have been waiting for this for a long time." "I'm sure you have." "You've lost your land, and now you will lose your life." Garrod reached for his sword. His hand grasped the hilt at the same moment the edge of Jayden's blade reached his neck. The gleaming steel pressed lightly against Garrod's throat, making a slight indentation in the skin, but not enough to draw blood.
"What is this?"
"A duel, and you just lost."
"That was no fair duel."
"Call it an execution, then. I do not have time for fairness. Crysin does not have time."
"You won't kill me. Not like this. It would be murder."
"In denying me the troops that are rightfully mine, you have committed treason. The penalty is death. The fact that you would draw your sword against me, whatever the reason, proves the depth of your treachery. Whether by the hangman or by my own blade, I will kill you, Garrod. I swear it." He would drag the young man into the square in front of the keep and behead him himself, if he had to, and appoint Zurith Pool the new governor of the East. It made sense. His side burned and his temple throbbed, reminding him of one grisly deed he had already had to perform this day. But this was no possessed troll. This was one of his subjects. A creak behind him caused him to turn. The door to the council chambers opened, and the pimpled teen, Coughlin, emerged, followed by a few more of Garrod's young counselors.
"We heard the shouting,"
the youth began, his voice cracking only once. "Stay back," Jayden told him. "This is the business of the crown, and no longer concerns you." Garrod used the interruption to thrust himself backward and draw his sword. With an effortless slash, Jayden cut deeply across the knuckles of his sword hand before he could attack. Garrod howled and dropped the weapon. When he reached to pick it up, Jayden kicked him in the face, sending him sprawling on his back atop the stone walkway. Garrod quickly recovered and lunged, heedless of the blade pointed directly at him. Instead of running him through, Jayden struck him unceremoniously in the forehead with the pommel of his sword. Garrod fell back against the low wall that made a small protective barrier against the open courtyard to the north, blood flowing into his eyes from the open gash at his hairline. Jayden placed the point of his scimitar against Garrod's chest, pinning him there. The remaining counselors, 7 in all, had emerged and had their weapons out. Sidra burst through them to stand at Jayden's side, with her big hunting knife drawn. Spirion stood nonchalantly in the doorway with the Droka, appearing little more than curious. "Would you threaten your crown prince as well?" Jayden asked the young men. "How many of you wish to lose your heads along with him?" The group exchanged uncertain glances, but made no move to stand down. "Apparently you do not understand me. Put your weapons away." This time, when they did not respond, he flicked his wrist to the right, slicing their young leader across the left shoulder. Garrod cried out, clutching at the shallow wound. The young men reluctantly sheathed their weapons. Jayden looked deep into the other's eyes, trying to judge him fairly by what he saw there. Garrod met his gaze with a stubborn glare at first, but eventually lowered his eyes and began to sob. The blood mixed with his tears, and he wiped repeatedly at his eyes, turning his head to hide his shame from those assembled on the little rampart. There was no anger left in Jayden for him, only pity. He tried to think of how his father would have handled the situation, but could not. "By surrendering to your fear, you have become a liability to the people. Mora is part of Crysin, whether you wish it or not. Mark my words, Garrod. I will not let Crysin fall to the betrayer and his unnatural allies. If you do not stand with me in this, you stand against me. Because your father was a noble man and well respected, I offer you this one chance to admit your crimes and limit the shame you have brought on your family." He leaned close, speaking so that only Garrod could hear. "Think carefully before you speak, for these may be the last words that ever leave your lips. Think of your grandfather when you speak. Think of what he stood for he watches us even now, surrounded by the spirits of your ancestors. Your words will reflect on them. Have you anything to say before I pronounce my final judgment on you?" The others did not exist at that moment. It was only the two of them, and the deadly point of Jayden's sword. Their enmity, Their private battle had reached its breaking point, and Garrod had lost. Whether he would accept defeat graciously or be dragged kicking and screaming to his death was up to him. "I wish," Garrod began quietly. He cleared his throat and continued a little louder. "I wish I had your confidence, Jayden, but I cannot find the hope that shines in your eyes. Kill me and be rid of me. I have denied you, and I know it is treason. I have secretly and outwardly wished you ill, and for that I am ashamed. I thought you were a weak and arrogant boy with no hope of succeeding against the forces that oppose us. But it is I who am weak. What that thing did to Grandfather—" Garrod's voice changed then, and he met Jayden's look squarely. There was no fear now, no malice, only resignation. "I have lived like a coward since that day, but I swear that I will die like a man of Mora. My grandfather was loyal to his king. He would have died for Urien, and I know that he would want me to follow his heir. I will be loyal to you now, in the end. Whatever sentence you pronounce on me, I accept it willingly. Whether you march me to the gallows or take my head and put it on a spike in front of the gates as a warning to those who oppose you, it is half of what I deserve. Judge me, and be done with it." Jayden steeled himself for the pronouncement. He was bruised, broken, and tired, but he told himself that he must be firm. Garrod looked back at him, awaiting the sentence that he knew he had earned. The words would not come. He lowered the blade. "You are a stubborn, stubborn man," he said wearily. "I have been told that I am too, on more than one occasion, if it's any consolation. I am going to tell you something that my mother told me once. I'm not speaking down to you. It's good advice that I would freely share with anyone. Make your stubbornness a virtue. If you choose your battles well, it will see you through the toughest of times. If you are stubborn for the sake of being stubborn, you will have a long life of pointless struggles." I remember her words when I find myself opposed to something and I don't know why. He studied Garrod's face again, searching for some clue as to who the boy was that he might have missed. As far as he could tell, Zurith had been right on point about him, which made sense, since the man had been close to him since the day he was born. Jayden trusted Zurith Poole. "Do you swear to agree to any sentence I pronounce, and fight me no more?" Garrod nodded his acceptance, the fierceness in his eyes proof enough of his sincerity. "I swear it." "Do you swear to do as I command, even if it goes against what you think is best for this city?" "I will." "Then I pronounce the following judgment on you, Garrod Deimos, son of Darien, grandson of Toravan. In the morning we will call a gathering of the entire city. Everyone. You will swear fealty to me, and I will proclaim you the official governor of the eastern province of Crysin." Garrod stared as if he had not heard properly. "You would do that?" "I have no choice. The people respected your grandfather, and they will respect you because you bear his name. To depose you now would cause ripples of unease that I have no time to quell. Our blessed kingdom has been torn apart enough." "Thank you, Highness." "You can thank Zurith Poole. It is he who vouched for your character. Incidentally, my first command is that you appoint him as your high advisor, and that you listen to him." "I swear it." "Dismiss these others." Jayden waved a hand toward Garrod's youthful entourage. "I am sure they have their merit, but let's wait until they can grow some hair on their faces before we start taking advice from them, shall we? It is men like Poole who I want guiding your decisions. Your grandfather trusted the man. My father trusted him. And so do I. I have wronged him greatly, I know." "You have, but I have a feeling he'll forgive you if you ask him nicely. Now get up and help me restore this land to its former glory, brave son of Crysin." Jayden reached out his hand to Garrod, who took it firmly, and he pulled the younger man to his feet. Garrod's weight caused his ribs to shift awkwardly, and he grunted at the pain. "What's the matter?" "I am fine," Jayden replied, sheathing the sword as delicately as he could. "It's Poole you should be worried about. If I were you, I would find him and apologize as quickly as I could, before he decides to run off with the entirety of Mora's armed forces." Garrod actually managed a sheepish grin at that. "I will, Your Highness," he said with a bow. Then he departed, his former counsel nipping at his heels in confusion. "Your Highness certainly does make things interesting," commented Spirion with a wry twist to his mouth. "Perhaps not the choice I would have made for the position, but then I never was the best at delegating authority. It takes a measure of trust I was never able to master." Jayden turned to stare out over the northernmost courtyard. People were milling about below, going about their lives as best they could under the circumstances. Tomorrow would bring a new day for them, a day of hope, he believed. The people of Mora had been caged by fear as surely as he himself had been caged by Hycenthor in his slimy little cell below Hagmere, though many of them may not have even known it. He had escaped, and he would see that they were freed as well. Yes, there was at least a glimmer of hope for them now. I had to promote him or kill him. He did not leave me many options. There will be plenty of killing to come. What is to stop him from gathering his troops and throwing you in the dungeon? He believes that I can save this kingdom, and this city with it, because I made him believe it. Now I must live up to that promise. Poole was right. Garrod is not a bad man. He is stubborn to a fault, but he genuinely cares about these people. He loves them. He just had a poor way of showing it. General Carthagian once told me that sometimes the fiercest enemy can make the strongest ally, once your causes are aligned. If he was right, then I may have just made a friend for life. Spirion's face softened for a moment. The general is a wise man, and I think that Crysin will soon have a fine king. He smiled at the rare compliment from the wizard. My father always said that the main purpose of a leader was to make the people believe that someone was in charge, because many of them need to believe it. It allows them to live their lives without having to constantly worry about the safety of their families or of themselves. When things are in a state of disarray, like they are now, they look to a leader for direction, and that leader must give it, else everything will dissolve into chaos. I can give them direction because there is only one direction for me, and that is west, to Eridan. I would have run Garrod through without a second thought if I believed he would still try to stop me. He won't. The only way to stop me is to kill me. Sidra placed a hand on his shoulder. There was a comfort in her touch that he had not felt in a long, long time. "You are not alone." "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if I had not met you. Both of you," he added quickly. He had meant the comment for the both of them. A cluster of soldiers appeared in the courtyard below, escorting a horse-drawn wooden cart. The heavily guarded procession approached one of 5 large wagons filled with people and stopped. A man in the traditional white garb of a chef began filling bowls with steaming liquid from a large pot that sat atop the cart. Wagons full of people? The wagons were sided with thick wooden slats, like cages for dangerous animals. As he watched, a soldier opened the heavy door at the back. A woman dressed in rags immediately made a dash for freedom, trying to hurdle him. The burly soldier nonchalantly reached up and backhanded her out of the air, sending her reeling to land hard on the floor of the wagon. Next, a beggarly-looking man stepped forward threateningly. The soldier drew an axe. "Stop it!" Jayden shouted down at the man, too far away to be heard clearly. The soldier continued forward, and Jayden felt powerless as the mad scene played out below. Then the wagon door suddenly slammed shut, seemingly of its own accord. Both the soldier and the ragged man jumped back in surprise. "Can you get me down there?" he asked Spirion, who was just lowering his arms from his efforts with the door. "I think so." "What is going on?" asked Sidra. "I have to get to those wagons." "Wagons? You should be in bed. I have held my tongue until now because of the circumstances, but you are pushing yourself too hard." "You don't understand." "Oh, don't I? What I understand is that unless you have found a mender that we don't know about, you need to get off your feet so that your broken ribs can heal before you puncture a lung and drown in your own blood." "Those are my soldiers abusing people down there," he pleaded. Most of the soldiers in question were currently having a good laugh at their shaken comrade's expense, while he appeared to be doing his best to convince them that the door had closed of its own accord. One of the laughing men grabbed the handle of the door and pulled on it as if to disprove the man's claims. When it did not budge, he stopped laughing and pulled harder. He began a closer examination as though something must be physically impeding it. "You can send someone else to reprimand them," Sidra suggested. "Who?" he asked, looking about the rampart in mock expectation of finding someone. "Send one of Garrod's men, or a soldier in the keep." She was probably right, he realized with irritation, but he did not intend to let her dissuade him from his present course. Who did she think she was, anyway, speaking sensibly when he felt the situation demanded immediate action? His mother had always had a habit of talking sense at the most inconvenient times as well. Of course, when he went against her advice, it had generally landed him in a spot of trouble, like the time he had convinced Matthias it would be a good idea to shoot the rapids at Highland Falls on a hollowed-out log. But this was different. He was not 14, and she was most certainly not his mother, although the fact that he had to tell himself that was slightly disturbing. Hadn't he just given the future governor of the East a lecture on stubbornness? "I would not trust them to do it correctly," he said. "Besides, I want to investigate those wagons." Cedra shook her head and muttered something under her breath, but let the matter rest. "Put me down there, please," he told the wizard.
"You will have to jump."
"Jump?"
"It is much easier to slow your fall than to pick you up off the ground, believe me. Working with gravity is an entirely different matter than working against it."
"Very well." He stepped up onto the low wall. Looking down, he immediately grew dizzy. The few stories to the bottom had not seemed nearly as far before he had agreed to leap into the empty air of his own accord. "Are you sure about this?"
"Of course,"
the wizard replied, as if questioning him was beyond merely an odd thing to do.
"Simply propel yourself forward, and I will slow your descent."
Sensing his hesitancy, Cedra was looking at him with a self-satisfied smirk. "How dare she?" "Here I go," he proclaimed, making sure Spurion was paying close attention. Then he jumped. Far from falling, or even having an invisible power jolt him to a halt in mid-air, the moment he left the wall it felt like a giant hand grabbed hold and gently lowered him. The sensation was almost pleasant, exhilarating even. People in the square began to notice him about halfway through the slanting descent. Spurion was directing him forward toward the wagon at a gentle angle, and their shouts of alarm alerted the soldiers, who could only stare in shock as their crown prince lightly touched down in front of their astonished faces. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, even before he had come to a complete stop. The soldier who had been rough with the woman blinked and shook his head, as if attempting to wake himself from a dream.
"Who are you?"
the man asked once he realized that the floating figure was not dissolving into the ceiling of his bedchamber. "Jayden Ryanthorn. Now answer me." The name did nothing to calm the man, who actually began to shake before realizing that the rest of his comrades had snapped to attention. He quickly followed suit. "We are feeding the refugees, Your Highness." "Refugees? Refugees from where?" "From the north, Highness." "From Eridan?"
"Some of them, and from Celis and the surrounding areas."
"Why are they caged?"
"Because they're animals," the soldier replied, as if stating the obvious. "Something has happened to them. Something unnatural."
The way the man looked at him left no doubt in his mind that his magic-aided arrival had grouped him in the same broad category. Jayden observed the faces of the refugees in the nearest wagon, and was shocked by what he saw. Anger, hatred, and most of all, fear. He knew at first glance that these people would kill him if given half the chance. They loathed him to his very core. Beaten and bedraggled as they were, they did look like animals. There were men, women, and children of all ages, the fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters of his homeland, all packed together in the wagon. They huddled alone, never in groups or even pairs, keeping to themselves as if they were as afraid of each other as they were of the soldiers. People of every station and profession, rich and poor, all of them people the Ryanthorn family was sworn to protect. It caught at his heart to see them so. All thought of reprimanding the soldier left his mind as he remembered where he had seen that look before. "Open the door."
"Your Highness?"
"Do it now."
"It will not move, Your Highness,"
the soldier was over-quick to point out. Jayden grabbed the door and tried to open it himself, shaking it in frustration when it would not budge. Spurion had sealed it tight. He moved around to the side, where a young girl stood watching him through wide brown eyes, clutching the wooden slats with her small hands. A tattered dress was all that protected her from the cool air. In the crook of her right arm rested the filthy remnants of a stuffed animal, her only possession. Her expression was cold, uncaring at first, but as he neared her, she spat at him. Some of the spittle struck his face, mingling with the tears that had begun to well. He had never in his life felt hatred like he did for Grisland at that moment. Even his loathing for Heisenthor paled in comparison to the overwhelming desire he felt to stamp out the wizard's life. It was not the murderous bloodlust he had felt for him in the past, but a deep longing to end the existence of something so evil that it could cause this much suffering. Somehow, the wizard had done this to them. The girl growled as he reached for her hand.
"Be careful, your highness. She will bite you."
Her tiny fingers were cold to the touch. Just as it had with Sidra, a slight tingling sensation passed through him, into her. Her brown eyes widened even farther, and a small gasp escaped her mouth. She looked around in confusion, and then, as Sidra had done, she began to scream. He tried to calm her with gentle words and gestures, but she was frantic. The surrounding inhabitants of the little wagon took exception to the disturbance, sneering at her threateningly. Some of them began to close in on her.
"Get her out of there!"
he screamed at the soldiers, who rushed to try and open the door. One man drew his axe and began chopping at the wooden slats. Jayden searched the little square desperately for help and saw Spirion and Sidra approaching.
"Release the door!"
he shouted at the wizard.
"Release it now!"
Spirion blinked in surprise, and with a small gesture sent the door crashing open. He rushed past the startled soldiers, into the wagon. Hands grabbed at him. He was struck in the face. Each time he was assaulted, he would fling his own hands out, fingers spread wide, touching any exposed section of flesh that he could. Unwashed bodies reeled away from him, their cries ringing through the courtyard and echoing eerily off the stone of the surrounding walls. One of the soldiers bounded into the wagon, his axe at the ready.
"Get out!"
he yelled at the man. The onslaught of attackers ended swiftly, with some of the refugees sobbing brokenly on the floor, while others simply stared dumbstruck at everything or nothing. The little girl was lying on her stomach, with her arms covering her head, trampled but still moving. Jayden took her carefully in his arms. She clung to him fiercely, crying with her face buried in his shoulder. His ribs hurt, but he hardly noticed. "Send for Garrod," he ordered one of the men. "The rest of you, bring the others to me one at a time. All of them. And be gentle." There was a sudden commotion at the entrance to the courtyard. A group of men in flowing black robes were arriving from the inner city, bearing a sort of litter with poles attached to a cage made up of thick iron bars. A broad, muscular man was chained inside. It was Eckenroy.